let's get started with learning how to figure out these things called ratios. So I'm going to repeat that word just to make sure you know it is ratios, not radios. Okay, it's ratios. Okay, and let's start with that definition. So I have your packet out, pencil ready to go. Here we go, filling in blanks. So a ratio is a comparison of two quantities. Quantities are just things that we compare. It shows how many times greater one quantity is than another. So you're just comparing two things, and the ratio tells you how are you comparing those with numbers. Okay, so there are three ways to write a ratio. We're going to start with that, but there are also three types of ratios. Okay, so when you're writing a ratio, you can use something called a colon, so those two dots like that. Okay, make sure you're getting this written in your notes just like I have up here. You can also write a ratio as a fraction, so you can use a slash, or if you want to write it straight across. Or you can use the word to, so like comparing something to something else, okay? So let's pretend I have some candy, okay? Let's say I have 3 M&Ms and 5 Skittles. I could write that ratio of M&Ms to Skittles as 3:5, so we'd read that as 3 to 5, and the colon is representing that word to. We could write that as a fraction, like 3/5 or 3/5, either one, however you prefer to write your fraction. Or you can write that as 3 to 5. So all of these are saying the same thing. We can just write it either with a colon, a fraction, or the word to. So it'd be like if I had said 3 M&Ms to 5 Skittles, 3 M&Ms to 5 Skittles, so on and so forth, okay? But there are also 3 types of ratios that we're going to talk about and then give you some examples of. So this is different than how we would write it. This is what type of ratio it is. So you could have a part to part. And what I mean by that is, let's talk about like people who wear glasses to people who don't wear glasses. So like if we were talking about the people in our classroom, a part to part ratio would be glasses to no glasses, right? Those are two individual parts that we could be talking about and comparing. I could even say no glasses to glasses. I could flip it around. That would still be a part to part. Another type would be part to whole. So kind of like the total of something. So this would be like if we said glasses to all students or glasses to total students, something like that. If you need to pause the video to get all this written down, please feel free, but I know these are a little lengthier, but you do need to write all the words here. Okay? And the last one would be if we took part and whole and flipped it around. So instead of comparing the part to the whole, we could compare the whole to the part. So that'd be like if I said all students to no glasses, so a different part. Okay, so these would all be different types of ratios you could have. Okay, so we got 3 different ways to write a ratio versus 3 different types of ratios. So let's put this into practice. And again, if you need to pause the video to get this stuff written down, please feel free. Otherwise, moving right along. Let's try an example, because it's always easier if we have an example. So we've got some squares, we've got purple squares, green stars. Let's look for these comparisons. So remember, it's just 2 things we're comparing, we're writing a ratio for it. So it says the purple squares to green stars. So a ratio for that would be, well, how many purple stars there, or I'm sorry, how many purple squares are there? 1, 2, 3 to green stars. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can write that as 3 to 4. I can use the colon, I can write it as a fraction, or I can use the word to, whichever you prefer. Okay, now what type of ratio this is? Well, it's purple squares, which is one part, one thing, and then we got green stars, that's another part. So this is a part to part, okay, because it's 2 individual items we're talking about. I could even flip it around and say green stars to purple squares. Now that means I would also flip my ratio and have it be 4 to 3, but it would still be a part to part ratio. Okay, so let's try another one. So now I've got purple squares to total shapes. So purple squares again would be 3, so I'm going to have 3 come first because purple squares comes first. And then total shapes, so now I need to count up all the shapes. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this ratio would be 3 to 7. You can use the word, the colon, or the fraction, your choice. Okay, so the type of ratio this time would be a part, which is purple squares, to whole because it's total shape. So it's part to whole for that one. Okay, and notice how every time I've been writing it in the order that it says here. You have to do that because if I flip it and say 7 to 3, that'd be like if I said there were 7 purple squares and only 3 total shapes. Well, that doesn't make any sense. So you gotta make sure that number matches the whatever you're talking about. Last one we're going to try here, total shapes to green stars. Well, we know the total shapes from last time was 7, so now we need to look at green stars, and there are 4 of them, so this one's going to be 7 to 4. You can use the slash, the word to, or the colon, your choice. Okay, and now this time, this had the total coming first, so it's a whole to part. Okay, there's never going to be a whole compared to another whole because those would be two different totals that you're talking about. Like, for example, if I said total shapes to total students, well, those are two different things I'm talking about. So that would really be a part to part, even though it's talking about a total, because those don't relate to each other. The shape of the stars relates to the total shape, so that's why that would be a whole to part. Okay, so if you're not sure, you can feel free to rewind, but otherwise, you have some practice on IXL to go do. So you have an IXL R.3. Remember, log in through Clever like you have with Extra Math. Same exact idea. If you're having trouble finding this, please come see a teacher right away. Change it to red. We'll help you figure it out. But you need to get to a score of 80 or higher, your choice if you want to go past 80 or not. And then once you do, don't click off the screen. You want to show a teacher to get a signature. Okay, good luck. You can do it. Feel free to look back at your notes to help.